with me, I can tell who's been in this room with me before. Because everybody that has been in this room with me before knows what I'm about to do, right? So for those of you that are in the back third of the gyms, so dude in the blue shirt, stop walking. Stop, go back 10 steps. Stop. There you go, stop at the chaplains. If you are behind him, there's plenty of seats, come on down. And then Chaplain Clark's gonna stand up as the demarcation line. Come on, Jay, stand up so everybody knows where it is. Where's the D stunt double? Swiss is right here, right? Come up on stage, Swiss. B cubed, we're broadcasting. We're good, awesome. How's this mic? You can unmute my other mic. Test. All right. We're trying. Come on down. Oh, yes, they need Swiss off stage. All right, slightly non-standard. Happy Friday, everybody. Indeed, yeah, happy Friday. So I'm gonna, through the next few slides, over the next few minutes, I'm gonna build a little bit of historical context. For those of you that were in this room with me on Monday, it was a little bit more of a fireside chat style, and I told them, as I am about to tell all of you, it is really good to see all of you. This is not the first back in-person event that we've had, but today and this week specifically are very, I'll say, monumental in-person events. And it's been a journey, and that's kind of what we're going to talk about for the first portion here of the All Call in the Town Hall. If you're joining us online, go to the next slide, please. You can participate in at least a one-way manner. You can push questions or comments to me or to Chief Swistak, standing in for Chief Ward Swanigan, via the typical line, 707-412-8922. And those of you that are in the crowd here in person that are too shy to stand up and ask me the question verbally or provide the comment verbally, you're also welcome to use your device, as long as that's the only reason you're using the device, okay? And your friends left and right will keep you honest on that. 707-412-8922. Questions, comments, other information. The line is actually open 24/7, 365. We get to them and try to clear the queue, so to speak, at the Friday town halls. You ready, Chief? Close? Okay. So there's the number. Next slide, please. So it's been a journey. Raise your hand if you have been in your current job from, say, 29 February 2020 consecutively through to today. Okay. So that's a lot of people, and you'll note my hand went up as well. Why did I pick 29 February 2020? Because that is where, in my personal journal of what I had no idea how long it was going to be, called the pandemic, I called it D0. Why was 29 February 2020 what I decided to declare day zero of the pandemic? Anyone? Say it. First U.S. fatality was recorded on Leap Day, 29 February 2020. It was also a very big day in my life as an aviator, which if you'd like to talk about that some other time, I'll happily talk to you about that as well. But what we've got up here is a quick summary, and that's, math in public, 5 calendar years. Now, we're not through the 5th, and the first one really was only impacted at the later portion of the year. But in late 2019, as you recall, we started to get some interesting things out of that region in China, that region of the People's Republic of China. I remember thinking, interesting. What did you think about what you remember thinking when you heard about that, if you heard about it in the calendar year of 2019? Next build, please. Fast forward, 3-ish months, 12 December to 11 March, it had gone from interesting in China to bang, World Health Organization declares a worldwide pandemic. And then by April, we hit 1 million cases recorded in the world. We all know that it was and is and remains infectious enough that for the 1 million reported cases, the factors range from 2x to 10x. So certainly much, much more than 1 million cases worldwide by 4 April. And between that point in time, a couple big things had happened in my life. One, I had taken command of the 412 test wing. And two, I declared day 0 of the pandemic in my pandemic logbook or pandemic journal. Next build, please. Now, later in 20, so we've gone through, the California governor declared everybody stay home day. Many of you remember that, especially if you raise your hands like I did. How are we going to handle this? We've gone through a lot of the how does it transmit, how do we protect against it. We all knew 6 feet by that point, right? Which is really 2 meters, which is really just a swag, right? We've gone from we think it's only large droplets and or touch related to actually it may be airborne, and we're turning into it's actually going to be primarily airborne, right? So think about where you were by fall of 2020. Think about where you were and about what you knew and about what we'd already learned by September or late September of 2020. Not the build yet, but we were all getting hopeful at that point because a great weapon was about to enter the war against the virus. Next build. We got an EUA from Pfizer late that year. Tens of thousands of people had already received the vaccination in the form of the trials. Next build. And this was a big day in my life. 11 January. Yes, I'm disclosing medical information to you. I trust you all. That was the day I got my first COVID shot. I happened to have been TDY at Eglin in an aircraft qualification course. And I was in the eligible pool, I'll get it. And so mine was Moderna. And so think about your first shot of what for me is now 4 or 5. I actually know the number. I just don't remember if it's 4 or 5 extemporaneously here. But I remember the first one thinking, well, that's cool, but my wife still doesn't have her vaccinations, and my kids aren't even eligible, right? So from my family's perspective, that was a big milestone for me, but not for everybody, right? Do you remember when you got yours? You probably do. I remember the picture, because I was TDY, I remember the picture of, and it was, so pretend I'm Colonel Gordon and pretend Chief is Ian Eishen. And they had, remember the poster they had up in front of the vaccination clinic? That was I just got my shot. Yep. And they were both going like, behold, right? And it was the first one. And he was a fire dog. He was a civilian fire dog. And that dude was walking on cloud 9, right? Do you remember that moment for you, right? Maybe you weren't walking on cloud 9, but I'm sure you remember that moment or those moments as well. A couple weeks later, I got my second one. It's not on here in accordance with the timeline. But you know what I remember about my second shot? I remember it knocked me, right? My body had a massive positive and affirmative reaction to that, which is good, right? And like a good patient, plus a good male, plus a good fighter pilot, the doctor that administered the second shot said, you need to hold out as long as you can because the more robust the reaction, the better the effect. And so 12 hours of curled up like a little kid, shivering, feeling really bad, aches all over, and my spouse saying, really? 105? Really? So I got you have to do something about this or I'm actually taking you to the emergency room. So I capitulated eventually and knocked my fever down a little bit. But that was a no fun 24 hours. The good news was that I was really confident I get a robust immune response. And that gave me a lot of confidence going forward personally. I'm sure you remember yours as well. And your boosters for those of you that have had them. Let's build one more. Now into the United States, 500,000 recorded fatalities directly due to the pandemic by February of 2021. Build. And then we got into the Delta is different summer, right? You remember where you were when Delta started surging, and it's a race against can we get more people vaccinated and or get natural immunity before the thing continues to update and evade us, right? That's still actually an open question. We think we understand where the answer is right now, but that was, you remember where you were, right? Delta's different. And I remember a lot of people telling me many times, oh, I've had it, I'm good. I'm like, no. That's like saying 3 years ago I had the flu, I'm not worried about the flu now, right? It's not a thinking adversary, but it is certainly an adaptive adversary. And it's testament to math. You know, what does the virus have to its advantage from a mathematical standpoint? It has the law of large numbers, right? Like into the trillions and trillions and trillions and probably more of times that it replicates, and every time it does that, has a chance to out-evade us. So Delta is a good example of that. Next. And then it did it again, right? Do you remember what we described Omicron as? Do you remember what you heard it described as or what you thought of it as, that variant? I remember it being described as independent of whether you've had COVID and recovered, independent of what your vaccination status is. You either have had Omicron or you're going to have Omicron. And your previous vaccinations and infections would determine how severe your case was, but it was that infectious. In fact, the numbers I remember hearing about were it was potentially the most infectious agent known to kind, like ever. Now, it turns out those numbers were a little bit exaggerated, but it's really close. It's measles, right, Michelle? And it was a close second to measles and the most infectious thing that humankind has ever dealt with, and that's Omicron, which drove us into the Omicron surge. Go ahead, ruining yet a second Christmas for you and your families and your loved ones, and we fell off that in early 2022. Now the numbers start to work to our advantage. We had a lot of people vaccinated. Turns out that Omicron was highly infectious, but not quite as lethal, which if you could design a virus that wanted to live forever, that's what it would do. It would be highly infectious, but not very lethal, to have maximum replication. So it's not necessarily illogical that that's where the variations not ended up, but that's where they went. That doesn't mean they're going to stay that way. And we had a lot of shots in arms. So, you know what I've wondered about 10 billion vaccines administered? I've wondered what the pile of surgical steel needles looks like if you stack that up somewhere, right? To tell you what kind of a geek and where I often spend my free time thinking. That's a lot, but those were not evenly distributed across the world, so there continue to this day to be pockets that are ripe or robust places where this type of a virus could replicate quickly and potentially spring another one or spring a part due. Next. Big day. Look at the date. Million recorded U.S. fatalities due to COVID literally 1 year ago today. 1 million fewer Americans. 1 million. That is more lost Americans directly attributed to the deaths due to COVID than I believe we've lost combined, and JT's going to check me on this, combat losses in all the wars our country has ever fought. Okay, think about that. And it didn't take people on the battlefield. It randomly took people, and it skewed to people that were more vulnerable as well. Let me tell you what's not recorded in those fatalities. I'm going to go to a quick personal vignette. I suspect all of you have been affected by a fatality directly. I mean, you're alive, so not you personally, but very close aboard, or at least a close second aboard. And I'll tell you mine. I am extremely blessed and fortunate that I did not lose a close family member due to the virus or due to a COVID infection. But I did lose a family member due to the pandemic. So let me explain that. If they didn't die of COVID, how did you lose them to the pandemic? My mother, when the pandemic started, was early in recovery from a very aggressive, from a diagnosis of a very aggressive form of cancer. The good news for her in 2020 was that there was a pharmacological counterplay that her oncology team said is going to work, and it turns out that it was working quite well. She was in her late 70s, And like many of us, and probably many people you know and are related to, in her late 70s, her memory of older events was awesome, but her memory of what her medical team told her the last time she was there wasn't great, and she took a copious amount of notes. But she was isolated. She lived alone by herself, in a building by herself. She did have a cell phone, and we could communicate with her, but the folks that she would interact with that were slightly younger, but one of them is a retired doctor, they did not get to see her. She didn't get to have lunch with them. And at some point early in the pandemic, my mother read on her prescription bottle that she needed to take every day as a counterfight against her cancer diagnosis, saw may cause drowsiness, may cause dizziness. And she's like, well, I have been sleeping a lot recently, and I note that I've been lightheaded when I stand up. So what did she do? She stopped taking it. Because my cancer's gone, I don't need this anymore. In late 2021, she went to her doctor and said, what's this? Stage 4 cancer. She died in January of 2022. Not directly because of COVID, but undoubtedly because of the isolation and the lack or the difficulty getting into medical care because of the surges that were happening in her part of the world and her nation, her part of our nation. So for every 1 million deaths we have there, I suspect all of you have a story like mine. Now, would my mother have had that metastatic cancer anyway later? Maybe. Was it going to happen then anyway? I don't know. But her medical care team and I conclude strongly that there was a direct result based on the time when she stopped taking the medication until the time she went to the doctor, and then her ultimate demise. Okay. I want that to be a serious tone, but not a downer tone that all of you think about the road we've traversed. Okay? Next slide. Earlier this year, so first of all, who had a reasonably normal Christmas? 2022, Christmas 22. That was awesome, right? Holiday parties came back. We're starting to step back into a new normal. Hybrid meetings are here to stay. I think that's a good thing. We are now broadcasting things like this where you'd normally have to be here to get it or you'd miss it. And so there's a lot of residual goodness from that point in time that we are now operationalizing and making a part of our normal lives in late 2022 and into 2023. The World Health Organization says the global emergency is over, right? Which is akin to COVID's gone, right? No, it's not gone. Build one more. And then yesterday, by presidential decree, the pandemic is over in America. But does that mean that coronavirus 19 or its derivatives are gone? The answer is no. We are now into an endemic, i.e. it's here with us forever, and it will probably have surges that are somewhat predictable for the rest of our lives, and probably the rest of the lives of your kids and grandkids for those of you that have them. Just like a lot of other things. So 100 years ago, a little bit more than 100 years ago, the world had a pandemic of what? Influenza. Mm-hmm. That went endemic in 1920, and it is still with us today. So 100 years from now, my prediction, if history rhymes, is that they will still have occasional waves and surges. 100 years from now, I won't be around, but some of you might be. They'll still have waves and surges in an endemic manner from COVID, and hopefully just endemic between now and then. Okay? So that's a heck of a journey. And I want you to reflect back on those thoughts and where you were and where your team was, where your mission was, where your family was, the highs, the lows, the goodness, the badness that you can hopefully avoid. But there's a lot to contemplate about that. The historical analogies that I want to drive are to, I think this much more resembles global war on terrorism or counterinsurgency, right? There was a singular event on September 11th of 2001 that kind of pulled us into that fight, but it was moving and raging a lot before then, right? And we had episodic things in that fight globally before then. And even today, even though we've officially withdrawn from a lot of those AORs, it's still going. So it wasn't a nice bookend, a start and a bookend finish. So that bookend analogy is World War II, right? Our nation was clearly in on a single day that all of us know, December 7th, 1941. And it ended, and somebody could tell me the day, I don't remember it, on on VE and VJ day in the appropriate AORs, right? So those were the start and stops of the war. This is not a start and stop day. Yesterday was not a, it's over. The enemy signed at the peace treaty table. It's, we're now into it in an enduring manner. Next chart. Next chart. So there's a lot of people that have been in this green dot in a sea of red with us for the last 4 years and change. A couple thousand active duty folks like Chief and I, a few guardsmen and reservists that are here. There's actually a lot more reserve in one squadron than 50, but we'll take the 50. Total military in the low 2,000s. You add in the civilians that are assigned at Edwards. You add in some contractors. You add in folks at Plant 42. You add in family members of those that are stationed here. And you get to a community of about 30,000. And it's been a journey in this community. And I've enjoyed learning from you and hopefully being with you and helping and supporting from above as you've made this journey. But it's a non-trivial community that you've been a part of. And I'm proud to have been a part of this community. I think we handled it exceptionally well. And when you think about what happened in New York, what happened in northern Italy, what happened in Los Angeles even, not too far away, look at what the state of Florida went through a couple times in the pandemic. We are very fortunate, I would say even blessed, to have been amongst these 30,000 people here in the center of the Aerospace Testing Universe the last 4 years. Certainly not perfect, but a very, very good place to be when there was a lot of red going throughout the nation. Next. So this is a chart that I think you can kind of see. Chief is going to be my Vanna White simulator. So starting on the left there, 8 March of 2020, we went from...
There it is.
Yes, yes. Can I buy another vowel, please? 8 March of 2020, we went from what is known as HPCon normal or HPCon nothing or nil, HPCon 0. We jumped to HPCon Alpha Plus. So we're going to do Alpha and do some additional measures in early March of 20, which makes sense, right? And then we went from Alpha Plus almost immediately to Bravo, and then almost immediately to Charlie. We stayed in Charlie for a period of, a couple months. We came off that initial wave. We get into the summer. Maybe we're going to do okay in the summer. We stayed Bravo throughout the summer, and then look at what happens as we approach Thanksgiving. And what was that? What variant was that? That was Delta, right? Delta. And so the Delta surge happens. We ramp up to Bravo Plus and then to Charlie, hoping to not go to Delta. HPCon Delta, remember those exercises and drills? I know Bohr does. And we didn't, but we were prepared to do that. And then we fell in early 21 off the top of that, and then back down to gosh, I hope we can have another real summer, and it's over, and it's over, and over. And then Omicron hit, and here we go again. And you can see the ramp up into another long duration Bravo, a quick surge into Charlie, and then relatively ratchet down fast. And it's interesting if you look at these changes in HPCon, and then if you were to overlay the infection rates, the Omicron surge was much taller but much narrower than the Delta surge, and the HPCon levels reflect that, which makes sense. But so this is a pattern. And then we ratchet, at that point in 2022, I get told you no longer have discretion about HPCon levels, and so we kind of have to do what the community levels are directing us to do with very little play in the joints, and that explains the last couple changes. In 2022, we get through we get through the holiday season in 2023, just to make sure you were not bringing back extra unannounced visitors from your holiday breaks in this room. We did a pretty broad screen as folks came back. We got a lot of asymptomatic cases there. It was a significant percentage that we detected. Fortunately, no fatalities out of that. But and then we've been in Alpha effectively since early 2023 through today. So that's HPCon chart. Thank you, Vanna. New call sign. What do you think, Vanna?
No. Please no. Please no.
Yeah, please no. I like Swiss. Swiss is much better. Next.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Another way to show the data, each one of these different color codes are a different time that we were there. So Alpha, very few days in Alpha Plus. Bravo Plus, I'm no longer allowed to declare the pluses. So you can see where we've spent. But the majority of the time, since the pandemic started, we've been in either Alpha or Bravo, more than a year in total each of the last 3.5 years. Next. Along the way, we had a couple bumps in the road, some theory of constraints and other things. So again, go back and think about them, right? So we had shortages. Who remembers cutting a t-shirt up, wrapping it twice around your face? Right? Who made masks out of cloth? Yeah? There's some real OSS heroes. I see Wigby and his squadron. Some real OSS heroes that in the fab shop that are used to working with sewing machines made thousands of cloth masks to distribute early in the pandemic, right? Until the supply system caught up. If you don't have it on you today, that's okay. But it should be close by when you travel, and don't keep a stash somewhere. But if you probably have N95s or equivalent stashed somewhere in your life, right? I carry one in my bag when I travel. I still wear one on my face for at least the first hour on an airplane when I'm in a tube of death. I mean, an airplane in the back like that. But masks were a real thing early in the pandemic. And then we got into who's an essential worker and who's not. And then we got into massive, broad stay-at-home orders, except fors, who's the excepts and whys. You guys all remember that. And then we got into definitions and reasons to isolate versus quarantine, especially pre-vaccination. Remember the debate between 14 and 10 days? I know Highlander does. Yes, I know Highlander does. What does social distance mean? I thought it was a quaint early 20th century term, right? Because I don't want to be socially distant from any of you. I just have to be physically distant from you. And so we were very fortunate to have the tech that allowed us to stay at least reasonably connected. Everybody remembers telework. Everybody remembers how fast we went in there, and a lot of you remember how difficult it is to pull back away from everybody telework as an emergency measure into something that's stable. That will be with us for a while, but I think we are arriving at a nice soft landing, unlike potentially the economy. But that's a good thing that we've been through. And then how do we handle kids in CDC? How do kids get back to school? Who was on a blue team? Raise your hand. A few of you were, I'm sure. Yeah. Who was on a silver team? Yep. You remember those days? We did that in a few of our organizations to make sure not all of the mission capability went away at the same time, pre-vaccinations. And then supply chain, supply shortages. If you are an LRS member in this auditorium today, raise your hand. And that's everybody, give them a round of applause. Like, who'd have thunk you'd have to go to a whiskey distiller to get hand sanitizer, and it had the consistency of moonshine, right? And the bottles that I'm sure you still see around your workplaces say, not for consumption, right? A different kind of alcohol, right? But real heroics on us finding new supply sources and new supply chains for very, very simple things like hand sanitizer. In fact, I literally remember telling General Bunch in an early AFMC, how are we going to get back to mission capability rate? I'm like, sir, I got the ability to have the airplanes, I have the maintainers, I have the tires, I have the GP8, I have the missions, I have all this, I have the control rooms, I even have the masks, but you know what I'm short of? You know what my actually pacing thing is? Hand sanitizer. So thanks for making that not the constraint, LRS, amongst many of the things that you did, setting that up. Okay, 1.1 thousand gallons hand-bottled of sanitizer delivered and available for distribution around the base. And then we already talked or alluded to the screening and the testing that we did in this room a lot. There's a lot of medical diagnostic screening that happened up the hill as well. We'll talk about how many tests we did. And then who still disinfects everything every time? A couple hands, I'm sure. I was on an airplane, I boarded an airplane May 1st, and I was traveling with my spouse. It was a Southwest jet, and we got on and sat in the aisle in the middle seat, and this lady that, hey, is that seat taken? No. She joins in, and before she sits down, she breaks out a sanitizing wipe, and she literally wipes down the wall, the seat, the everything, and I'm like, yeah, I've been there, I've done that, but I suspect she wasn't doing that in 2019, right? So a lot's changed, and a lot of things have gone through us, or that we've gone through. You remember some of the signs, some of the posters, you still around, you still see the dots, 6 foot spacing as you go into places. Next. But as of today, I declared we're back at HPCon 0.
All right. Yeah.
So, it's not a celebration, but it's any distance runners in the crowd, Missile, you count? Any distance runners in the crowd? If you ran your race right as a distance runner, when you cross the finish line, do you want to run anymore? You don't, right? You want your banana and you want your bottle of water or your bottle of something else that replenishes your carbs, right? I'm not interested in running anymore and elevating HPCon. That's going to take us, all of us, to do smart things along the way. We won't be able to control that, but we can certainly influence it along the way. I'm comfortable at 0. That doesn't mean the threat is gone, however. Next chart. Everybody read it to yourself, and then I'm going to make Chief read it out loud, the title of this slide. Go ahead, Chief. Read it out loud.
All right. Things that can still hurt you.
Okay? There are a lot of things in our environment, not all of them are pathogens, that can hurt you. You'll note on the list at the very bottom is COVID-19. So it just goes into a long list of things that can hurt you. And by no definition, thank you, Vanna, by no means is this an all-inclusive list, but it's a reminder that it's not gone. The COVID-19 thing is now endemic, just like influenza, just like RSV, just like norovirus. I'd like to think measles, salmonella, HPV, and West Nile virus are not endemic because they don't have seasonal waves, but there are real things out there that can hurt you. If you're my age-ish, shingles is a real threat to you. If you're an 89-year-old senator that has a home in Northern California, shingles is a real threat to you. And these are the things that are out there, and there's many more. Earlier this year, we had a triple-demic going on, RSV, influenza, and COVID, right? So it isn't just the pandemic or the virus anymore. It's on a long list of our adversaries. Next. We have a lot of tools. One of those tools remains vaccination. You don't just get your shots when you're young enough to not remember that. There's a lot of boosters that are required. There are a lot of boosters that are available, and you need to decide what the right balance is for you. I'm generally hurry up and get the vaccination because I'd rather have the vaccination and the after effects than the disease. That may or may not be the case for all of you, and you'll make your own decisions. But here's a lot of things that you either need a booster or you can voluntarily get to. Measles, MMR, right? Measles, mumps, rubella. Who's had a tetanus shot? Yeah, I'm told it's not awesome. I think I had one, but it's better than the old treatment if you get bit by somebody that was by an animal that was rabid. I remember chicken pox as a kid. Those of you that are young enough to not having gotten it or gone to a chicken pox party should be thankful for that vaccine. I have had the shingles vaccine, both of them. Wasn't quite as bad as my COVID shots, but I do have a very robust immune system, I'm finding out. Polio is real. We thought we had polio eradicated, and then a small pocket of anti-vax folks decided not to do that. And guess what, folks? It's back. It's back. I'm not even going to say the word that starts with PN because I can't pronounce it, but you know what it is, or you know that it can hurt you. Hep, rotavirus, influenza, anthrax. Those who've been around long enough remember the anthrax shots. It's still naturally occurring, and it can be around, and it can be and has been weaponized. We talked about COVID, and then RSV vaccine will probably be out soon and available. So this continues to be a great tool. Make sure you use it. If you're a military member, you kind of have to. But if you don't have to, I still encourage you to seriously consider the benefits of all these, in addition to all the other things that we can do proactively and preemptively. Next. And this is kind of what you can do. I'm not going to read it to you, but we talked about vaccines. Do things that make sense, right? Why did I told you I wear my N95 when I'm on a commercial airliner. Why? And why do I keep it on from the time I get on board, actually by the time I walk down the jetway, until at least an hour into flight? Because by then, the air has circulated enough through the HEPA filters to potentially filter out a significant amount. That is not the case when you're on the ground and just getting a little air. So I don't have my drinks or eat my food until I'm an hour or more in. Is that me being paranoid like the person that wiped down her seat? Maybe. But I've had one infection of COVID. It was worse than the virus, than my shot reactions, and I'm not interested in getting more for two reasons. Number one, I don't enjoy being away from mission. I don't enjoy being away from people and work. But number two, you know what else I don't enjoy? I don't enjoy knowing that that enemy of ours had a chance to replicate in my body and potentially mutate to something that could kill a lot of folks, to include me, my family, and my friends. And so that's one of the reasons why I continue to wear that mask and continue to do as many of these protocols as I reasonably can. All right. West Nile virus and norovirus, right? So don't get bit by a mosquito, right? It's real. And it's on the rise in and around our area. And norovirus, I'm told that it's like the worst potential diarrhea you can imagine. Does that sound about right, medical team? Yeah, okay. Not interested, okay? So again, wash your hands a lot and make sure the little ones in your lives do as well. Next. Now we get to some questions, and then we're going to break with a couple minutes left, and I got some accolades to throw up. So, pandemic, endemic, COVID, vaccinations, policy, HPCon, anything like that from anyone in the room. What a change. What a difference a year makes. Okay. I don't have a lot of updates, and I don't have a lot of things to push at you. That's effectively where we are. You know as well as I do that it's not gone. There's still a reasonable caseload. Pay attention. Do smart things and treat it like you would any of those other threats to you and your family and your coworkers and your friends. All right. Anything texted in? Where's my text reader? Anything texted in relative to medical stuff? Nope. Good.
I got them all. Yes, sir.
You got one, Chief?
Yes, sir. For medical related, and we actually quite a few. So
I like it.
If we can't get to all of them before this ends,
yep.
we'll get back to you through the front office. So with HBCon 0, are we done with COVID infection controls, 5 days without a mask, tracing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera?
We are. The answer is no, in a word. And the reason that I say no is that depending on what the disease is that you are infected with, you say, hey, here's what I got, or your medical team tells you this is what your diagnosis is, and then based on that diagnosis, you get a public health, this is what you must do. So I'll draw an analogy to, there's a lot of people that want to just and be done with this. Folks, it will never leave our environment in your lifetime. Who's had a coworker with pink eye? You want them to stay at work? I don't. I want them to go home, and I want them to isolate, and I want them to treat that disease, or that infection, so they don't spread it, right? We are blessed to have coronavirus, COVID-19, into that environment, or into that regime. So if the medically proper or public health proper thing for you to do is isolate on quarters if you're a military member, wear a mask for so many days, and when in doubt, just wear the mask, right? To slow or limit spread, that's what we're going to do. So completely valid question, but the answer is we're endemic, it ain't over. And just like a lot of other viruses. What else?
You can't blame them. You can't blame them, sir. They're probably excited to hear the 0 and it's over. It's not, right?
No, we're at 0, right?
Yes,
we're at 0.
And this is good, right? The last 4 or 5 years have been
It really is.
Interesting.
I'm not throwing a party, right? Because we're at 0. I'm notifying you we made it, right? But you know what? That was a hell of a storm that this carrier battle group, pardon the analogy, Air Force, sailed through, right? We lost some ships, and we lost a lot of people on the ships, but we're through it. And that doesn't mean we won't hit turbulent waters or other storms in the future, but we made it, and we cranked a lot of mission, and we did a lot of great things for our community, for our friends, for our family, but for our nation and our partners and allies as well.
Yes, sir, absolutely.
What else, Chief?
So this is more of a shout out. They want to know if we can get a round of applause for medical logistics.
So yeah, round of applause for medical logistics, right? And then that's probably a good transition point for us to transition to the second part of what I really want to do and brag on here. So Boar, come up on stage with me. DJ, come up on stage real fast, and then I'll let DJ start talking to the next event here. Come here, my brothers. So these two, you may or may not know what they have in common, other than being much, much, much taller than I am. So I called Boar at ACSC and said, I know you think you're going to show up and fly in the 418th and do great things in the VC-25, and it'll have its first flight in that year. Yeah, you remember that phone call? Yeah. Too bad, you're going to be my chief of the Commander's Action Group. And he's like, yes, sir. And then about a year later, he's like, I really need to find a replacement so I can do all that VC-25 stuff, including the first flight. Okay. And this was the guy he found to be my next chief of CAG. So with the exception of very early in 2020, these are the two gentlemen, the two leaders, the two officers that were the chief of the 412 Test Wing Commander's Action Group, did all kinds of coordination on installation commander directives, up channel, down channel. They had exceptional NCOs with them who literally are both not here. Actually, all three of them are not here today. So Vince, Ty, and Cindy, none of them could be here, but they would say it was all the NCOs. But it was not all just the NCOs. They were awesome, but you guys were tremendous leaders. They were also dual-hatted as our CAT, our Crisis Action Team leads, both as we interfaced up and also the ones that we held. And so I know you guys are just saying, just doing my job, boss. It was great to have you as a wingman and then train another great wingman and have you as a wingman to get through that last part of the pandemic. So I could not thank you more than what you're going to hear as they give you a well-earned round of applause. Thanks, Boy. I appreciate it. All right, thanks. Okay, now Boar's excused back to his seat. You may have known him as Major Lombach. It's changed, so he's forgotten all that. And DJ has some additional words. So over to you, DJ.
Mike, with the following individuals, please join General Higer and
Next slide, please.
Swistak on the stage. Captain Nathaniel Brown, Staff Sergeant Nick Buckingdahl, Master Sergeant April Gregory, Major Jose Velas.
V+11. Come on up, folks. So what you don't, so these four folks walking up on stage are some real medical warriors. As you recall, throughout the pandemic, I reminded us we had 4 combat fronts: deploy today to fight tonight, 24/7, 365 fight in cyber, the modernization fight, and our 4th combat front was in the bio domain against the virus. These are frontline warriors and examples of the frontline warriors that got us there. And just like any frontline warriors that have returned from a combat deployment, although they fought in place, I think it's time to hang a little hardware on them. You guys up for that? Okay.
Teammates,
so go ahead, DJ.
Teammates, please rise and remain standing. Attention to orders. Citation to accompany the award of the Humanitarian Service Medal to Captain Nathaniel Brown, Staff Sergeant Nick Buckingdahl, Master Sergeant April Gregory, and Major Jose Velasco
V+11.
These members distinguished themselves with outstanding achievement while assigned to the 412th Medical Group, 412 Test Wing, Edwards Air Force Base, California. These members went above and beyond their duties, powering the installation efforts to return to endemic operations. Captain Brown is Director of Coronavirus Operations, led a 23-member team which tested 3,000 patients and supported the treatment of 500 positive cases. Additionally, he supported the integration and pandemic-related care into 6 clinics and the transition to normal medical operations. Captain Brown helped and developed and implemented 3 nursing triage protocols and 2 primary care coronavirus screening protocols, and distributed 2,000 at-home tests, which supported 16,000 beneficiaries. Staff Sergeant Buckingdahl, as the NCOIC in charge of coronavirus operations, supported a 23-member team which tested 3,000 patients and supported the treatment of 500 positive cases. Additionally, he supported the integration of pandemic-related care into 6 clinics and the transition to normal medical operations. Staff Sergeant Buckingdahl helped develop and implement 3 nursing triage protocols, 2 primary care protocols, and distributed 2,000 tests, supporting 16,000 beneficiaries. Master Sergeant April Gregory, as the Public Health Flight Chief, supported the 23-member team, which tested 3,000 patients and supported the treatment of 500 positive cases. Additionally, she supported the integration of pandemic-related care into the 6 clinics and the transition to normal medical operations. Master Sergeant Gregory helped develop and implement the 3 nursing triage protocols and the 2 primary care coronavirus protocols, supporting 16,000 beneficiaries. Excuse me. Major Velasco Cerro, as the alternate public health emergency officer, led a 23-member team which tested 3,000 patients and supported the treatment of 500 positive cases. Additionally, he supported the integration of the pandemic-related care into the clinics and the transition to normal medical operations. Major Velasco Cerro helped to develop and implement 3 nursing triage protocols, 2 primary care protocols, and distributed 2,000 tests, which supported 16,000 beneficiaries. The efforts accumulated in ensuring that Team Edwards personnel know the threat, respect the threat, and ultimately beat the threat, successfully returning the installation to Health Protection Condition 0 for the first time in 39 months, securing the $14 billion research, development, test, and evaluation mission at the center of the aerospace testing universe. The singularly distinctive accomplishments of these individuals reflect great credit upon themselves and the United States Air Force.
Oh, you're not excused yet. Go ahead. You're welcome to shake their hands.
Yes, sir.
So,
Good job again.
if you want to sit down real fast, you're going to have to stand right back up again. So the choice is up to you. They're going to part like the Red Sea and make a large hole for the person that was our and my weather woman during the entire pandemic. So Lieutenant Colonel Michelle, Dr. Westy, Highlander, come up and join us, please. Make a hole. We don't have enough minutes left before the sun sets for me to brag on what Highlander's been through and what Highlander's done for us, right? She was a, hey, sir, this is not going to go well, very early in the pandemic. She was I don't believe the numbers, both on the upswing and the downswing. She was a voice of reason. She was a confidant. She was a, hey, Michelle, I really want to do this. Talk me out of it. You're right. I shouldn't do that. And a lot of those decisions had real positive impacts on our mission. They certainly had real positive impacts on the people that we live with, that we work with, that we are neighbors with. And she saved lives. I couldn't have done it without you. And I'm glad to have gone through this with an exceptional professional like you. Our Air Force is losing her to a promotion to civilian in the not-too-distant future, despite my best efforts. And I know you're going to land in a great place for that. So this is not your retirement event or your retirement medal, but I wanted to highlight you in a very distinct way. So we have one more to put on one more outstanding medical warrior. So please, publish the order.
Attention to orders. Citation to accompany the award of the Air and Space Commendation Medal to Lieutenant Colonel Michelle M. Westy. Lieutenant Colonel Michelle M. Westy distinguished herself by meritorious achievement while assigned to the 412th Medical Group, 412th Test Wing, Edwards Air Force Base, California. During this period, Colonel Westy went above and beyond her duties as the Public Health Emergency Officer, powering the installation's effort to return to endemic operations. Specifically, she advised the installation commander and the installation's COVID Crisis Action Team on the local coronavirus threat. Her close watch and thorough analyses of the coronavirus threat in both the local community and abroad generated trusted predictions that informed the installation commander's risk posture and shaped the risk-informed return to normal. Additionally, she supported the 3,000 patients, treatment of 500 positive cases, and the integration of pandemic-related care into 6 clinics. Colonel Westy helped implement 3 nursing triage protocols, 2 primary care coronavirus screening protocols, and managed the distribution of 2,000 at-home tests, which supported 16,000 beneficiaries. Finally, her efforts culminated in ensuring Team Edwards personnel ultimately beat the threat, successfully returning the installation to HPCon 0 for the first time in 39 months, securing the $14 billion research, development, test, and evaluation mission of the Center of the Aerospace Testing Universe. The singularly distinctive accomplishments of Lieutenant Colonel Westy reflect great credit upon herself and the United States Air Force.
Round of applause, everybody, please. Smile, feet. All right. Thank you. All right. You're dismissed except for Chief. Everybody else have your seats, please. Yeah, thanks.
Yes, ma'am.
You see the genuine, huge smile on Highlander's face today, right? That wasn't the face that I saw in March of 2020. It was the face, but it wasn't the smile. You're going to have wingmen that you went through the pandemic with, like I did with her. And oh, by the way, Board, you helped me name them, right? Yeah, Dr. Mears and Highlander. Anybody know why we picked Highlander? Well, first of all, she drove a Toyota, right? But there can be only one, right? So we had the picture of the Highlander. I'm going to defeat this damn thing. And it was her stabbing with a gigantic sword, right? And I would say it was battle well waged. And she didn't do it alone, and she had a great team doing it. And I had the same thing in her and in all of you as well. Okay, let's go back to the questions chart. I'll say this is open territory for questions and comments. We got about 10 minutes before we're done. Couple reminders, right? If you're a human and you have a mom, remember that Sunday is Mother's Day. If you are other ways related to a mom or your grandmother, you're blessed to have your grandmother still around, remember them as well and thank them. My spouse will remind me that you should thank parents, not just moms. So that day happens next month. Get ready for that one as well. And enjoy the weekend. It's been gorgeous weather here, and it'll be another awesome weekend with that. And I'm told that today is also a special military day, Chief.
Yes, sir. No? Okay, there we go. Okay. Today is Military Spouse Appreciation Day. And I would actually extend that a little bit. I was thinking about it. And significant others. And also what was recently released is the declaration by the DOD that May is Military Spouse Month, if you will. We'll get more details on that. Kind of the rundown of it is there's roughly 1 million military spouses that we're kind of dragging through this life, if you will, and we need to take the time to thank them. So today is Military Spouse Appreciation Day. Reach out to your military spouse. Just thank them for what they do. I already did mine, so I'm not complacent in not doing it. But you just take the time to do that today.
All right, so this is a very momentous military spouse month or celebration because something's changed since last May that directly impacts trailing military spouses. Raise your hand if you know what that thing that is officially changed, legally changed in the last year.
Nobody.
Yeah, I'm not going to pick on anybody.
There's a couple.
Yeah, raise your hand. Right. For the rest of you and many of you online, literally in the last year, federal law has changed in no small part because of folks like you as constituents writing to the California congressional delegation. You enabled enough residents to get into and I always get this wrong, it's the Veterans Automobile and Employment Act of 2022. And in Section 19 of that really awkwardly titled law, Section 19, it specifically requires all states in the nation to honor the licensure of a trailing military spouse in the profession in which they are licensed if the military member moves due to orders, right? Federal mandates. Implementation at the state level has been, as you can imagine, mixed, but there is a law now pushing the states in that direction. And so this is actually a very, I'll say, pseudo-celebratory Military Spouses Month because that one of those pieces of employment, a big obstacle is fallen. I would argue that that's probably like the first big section in the Berlin Wall that fell in this battle, and the rest of the wall is going to crumble down, and it will soon be just normal. And Germany will reunite, and our spouses that trail us will have the ability to move their career throughout that. Now, unfortunately, there is one career field exception. So I'm going to ask you, you're going to answer the question of what is that career field by answering the other question, what is the most prevalent career field in Congress? Say it? Yeah, lawyers. It doesn't apply to lawyers. Right? But everybody else, to include teachers, nurses, doctors, mental health professionals, all the way down to pharmacy, all kinds of other career fields and all kinds of licensure. There are restrictions on it, but they're reasonable restrictions, and then implementation in the state you're going to is, like I said, pocketed. We're going to make tremendous progress in California because of that federal legislation, additional tremendous progress in California because of that wasn't possible before. So that's a good, encouraging statement for military spouses, at least in the employment line on this May of 2023. Anything else military spouse related, Chief, in the questions or that you want to push?
No, sir, no questions on them.
Okay.
Other than getting out there and doing it, I do have some more questions for you when you're ready.
So how about I'll take the easy ones and reflect the difficult ones back on Swiss. So fire away, Swiss. Be careful which ones you ask.
All right, yes, sir. This is interesting. Maybe a little bit funny, I don't know. How long should someone stop at a stop sign to not be considered a California roll, if you will?
So the answer is until the momentum has stopped. And how do you know that? Because the car settles. And from outside looking at the car, you actually notice the wheels stop, right? I would argue to my soon-to-be teenager that will be driving soon that a curtsy doesn't count, okay? And that's the California stop thing. Now, I don't know if the questioner is asking related, but some of you may or may not know that my staff car with me in it was actually pulled over by our awesome defenders on Monday.
No one got fired.
So if you are wondering, do the defenders enforce traffic rules on the base? Let that be one more tick in the evidentiary bucket. Oh yeah, right? No citations were had, but the two-ship, extremely professional of defenders, said, sir, that vehicle didn't come to a complete stop at the last two stop signs. And I thank them for having integrity and courage because they probably knew whose car it was, right? And they did it anyway. And so a huge kudos to those two defenders, and any of the defenders on patrols would have done the exact same thing. And a huge kudos to the command and control system for making that happen in a relatively expeditious manner. I did not suspend my own driving privileges, but I did provide proper critique to the operator of the vehicle, right? Here's the deal, folks. If you are wondering how many miles an hour over, what's an actual stop, what's the definition of hands-free, does the school zone really matter, all those kind of things, you already know the answers. And I continue to challenge all of us to be the community that enforces that of the rest of our community so that our defenders have to pull a few less staff cars over for not stopping at stop signs. And I actually have to make a few less assisted traffic stops as I'm driving in and out the gates. If you do that to the folks that you work with, that you work for, and the folks that work for you, and remind them the acceptable number of miles an hour over the posted speed limit on this installation is?
0.
Use your cruise control. Set the speed limit. If you pull up next to a car and you're going precisely the speed limit and you stack up 20 cars outbound on Rosamond Boulevard, who cares, right? And I'm gonna call Wigby out again and say, thanks for the correction to math, Wigby, but I'm not gonna make him do it again. You're saving at best seconds, right? And the good news is you're doing the right thing for the right reason, and that, folks, is our first core value, integrity first. But you know what else it is? It's also the safe thing to do. We have hit pedestrians on Rosamond Boulevard on bicycles and killed them. We had somebody struck in a school zone recently on this installation.
Yes, sir.
During my tenure, we had a Marine who was running near the CDC, hit by a car. I believe the driver was distracted. We couldn't prove it. Distracted by a cell phone. And the cases are real, and the cases are legit. They're there for safety reasons. Is a turn signal a safety reason? It might be, but you know what a safety reason is? Driving faster than the posted speed limit in a school zone or using a non-hands-free device in a school zone. Those are clear and blatant safety things, and I encourage you to pay it forward, encourage your folks to remember that first core value, and know that, and here's my offer, as soon as we all reliably start driving the speed limit, I'll actually consider upping the speed limit to something that may be more appropriate. But until we all start complying with the rule now, what confidence do I have we're going to comply with the rule if I change it? And there's a person here in a blue shirt that's like, sure, that's never going to happen. So prove him wrong. Prove me wrong. Okay? All right. So yes, full stop. Please. Absolutely. Every time.
Yeah, so that answered another question that was asked about can we increase the speed limits, which it comes in frequently.
It's up to you. We can, but it's up to you. Okay. And let me put another thing in there. Your defenders are awesome. Our defenders are awesome, and they did an exceptional job that day, and I commend them for that. The person in error was the person that was driving the vehicle, not the defenders that pulled that vehicle over. And you can have great confidence that they're doing the right thing for the right reasons. So thank you, defenders. All right, what else you got, Chief?
All right, next one up, sir. Can you confirm or deny that a squadron commander was recently relieved of command?
I can confirm that on Monday morning, I relieved the 412th Comptroller Squadron Commander from command for a lack of faith and confidence. Okay. Many of you may not have known that. That's okay. Many of you may have a question of why. That's a fine question. If you ask it, I'm not going to answer it. I do want to remind everyone here, especially those of you that have been, those of you that will be, and those of you that are commanders. Command, including mine, is a privilege, not a right. And we all serve as commanders at the pleasure of our superior commanders. And when a superior commander has a lack of faith and confidence in their subordinate commander, that's the threshold for removal of command. And before doing that, by law, but by policy as well, the commander with the authority to remove has to advise their superior commander of their intent before taking the action. That was my decision because that commander worked directly for me. And I certainly complied with not just the letter, but the intent of that law and that rule, and got the advice and counsel of my commander before taking that, what is literally an irrevocable action. Guess who else got relieved of command this week in our Air Force? Anybody? 19th Air Force Commander, Major General, headquarters in San Antonio, 2 days ago on Wednesday. It's not common, but we hold our commanders to an extremely high standard, and their commanders are held to account for holding their subordinate commanders to that same high standard. And you can have confidence that that's a good thing for our Air Force. It is taken very seriously, and it is taken very deliberately when those decisions are made. And that's about the extent of everything I can push on that topic. So, appreciate the person that asked that question.
Yes,
I'll
sir.
say, well, I'm not going to end on that one, so you got to have at least one more.
All right, I got one for you, boss. I think this one, you can answer it fun, maybe, but I'll give it to you.
I'm not funny.
Yeah, I've gathered that, sir. But I am, I guess. Oh, wow, okay. So you know, there's these little things that slither around, they rattle a little bit in the end.
Yeah.
Rattlesnakes, right?
Yeah.
So what's the procedure if you get bit by a rattlesnake? This is a real question. This is not made up.
What's the procedure?
Yeah.
So I believe anybody CE, environmental, and there's medical in the room, right? Anybody on that team here? Yeah, so they're in virtual land. So I'm going to paraphrase. The poisonous snake that we are blessed to have in our environment is known as the Mojave Green. It is a pit viper, has a V-shaped skull, and they're out, right? I have actually seen one here at Edwards in my whole time, and it was that man right there who had caught it in a jar underneath the wheel of his car down the street. And how long do you think that was, Missile? Probably 14, 18 inches, something like that?
Yes, sir. 12 feet. A year later, it was like 5-6 feet, sir.
I'm sure. So Colonel Mizell, a couple doors down the street from me, found that underneath the tire of a vehicle, and he tends to walk around barefoot outside his house because he's a California native, he tells me. But he found it, he got it in a jar, and he went door to door showing everyone, hey, they're out, and here's what they look like. And then he released it into the wild so he could live his happy life. So that's the only one I've actually seen, but they're real. And so what's the procedure if you get bit? Medics, please correct me 100%, but it's really not a good venom, right? It's a neurotoxin. It takes a long time to get to a place that might have an antivenom, and because we can't store it very easily, that's a hurry-up, life-threatening event. The procedure is get to an ambulance and then get that ambulance to a hospital as soon as possible, and that's the best thing you can do. Stephanie, anything else you want to throw on that? And okay, I'm spot on, says my med group commander. The great news is that it is an extremely rare event, and they are also they don't want to be near you. And if you don't go search them out, they're not gonna find you. Although if you get to see Chief Ward Swanigan before she retires, she has an exceptional video on her phone of a young man that decided to challenge a full-grown Mojave Green by throwing a rock at it. And that full-grown adult Mojave Green did not take kindly to that and jumped back. And the person throwing the rock just got missed. So they will defend themselves, I guess, is the good ROE's, good law of armed conflict in the Mojave Green world. There are a lot of other snakes here, however. So if you see one, don't assume it's a Mojave Green. Snap a couple pictures. The distinct thing on rattlesnakes in the western United States is the shape from about here up. And if it looks like a diamond, it is, the pit viper. If it's anybody else, they have similar markings, and they're all kind of gray and dusty here anyway. So if you're worried about it, then avoid it. Small kids, animals, that kind of thing, avoid them as well. You're going to see a heck of a lot more rabbits, therefore a lot more coyotes, and therefore a lot more bobcats than you are snakes. Those can be just as dangerous if you're a little tiny dog or potentially a little child, but they are generally going to leave us alone as well. And the rabbit population is their favorite food. So I think that answers the question to the best of my ability. Again, it's very rare. You need to know that if you're on base and you live in zip code 93523, there's always at least one ambulance crew available to get to you. They are within small single-digit minutes of any place in the housing area. And so your trick, if you are out and around in places like that, is having cell coverage to quickly make that call. So that's about it. I don't want to make light of it, but I did. If you watch that video that Chief has, it's pretty amazing how far that snake leaped at the person that threw the rock at it.
They're not play toys. No, not at all. That's right.
They are not play toys. All right. I think that's what we'll take online. We'll take any more.
Yes, sir.
That in the next town hall, which we'll have answers on, which will be in 3 weeks. 3 weeks. And I'll talk through the schedule here in a second. But before I cut the questions off, is there anybody in the room that has one for me? Or for Chief, more importantly?
Shoot.
Okay.
No.
They're going to dogpile you after we're done. So next Friday, same place, same time, same channel, first quarter award ceremony.
All right.
Get up for it, right? Who's the defending champ in the Spirit Awards? MXG, is that right?
Yeah.
Maintenance group? Okay.
I think so.
You're gonna have to bring it strong, maintenance group, to defend that title. I know there's some close champions for that. I unfortunately will not be here, but Chief Ward Swanigan and Colonel Kaspers will be handing out the awards, and that's next Friday for the town hall slot. The Friday after that is a family day, and then the Friday after that is I'll say a somber day, but an excited day all the same. We will have a town hall on the 2nd of June, but that town hall will be within hours of the retirement of D. Ward Swanigan. So that's gonna be a tough day for me, and he'll be holding the reins as the stunt double command chief until Chief Stoltzfus gets here a little bit later in the summer. So it's gonna be big highs, big lows, big highs the next few Fridays along the way. Be safe. I will see all of you on the 2nd in the town hall, wherever you attend to join it, and I encourage you to bring it strong. Both online and watch parties, but especially in person for the quarterly award ceremony next Friday. Chief, anything before we send them on the way for the weekend?
Yes, sir. Just a nice reminder, go thank your military spouse or partner. And don't forget to call your mom or that person who filled that role in your life. Give them a call this weekend. I'm sure they'll be very happy to hear from you. That's all I have, sir.
Thanks, Chief. Thanks for standing in for Dee.
Yes, sir.
Who's wrestling with household goods movers right now. I know she'd much rather be here.
Yeah.
All right, to everyone that attended in person, thank you. For those watching online or those of you going to watch the rebroadcast, thanks for your time and attention. Remember that number, 707-412-8922. Text in a comment or a question anytime. We'll queue it up for the next event. And the Edwards app is also a great place to get information to us. There's a Speak to Commander sub part of that app as well that you can that will get answers back to the broader audience. My last thought is always a thank you. Thank you for doing everything you do. Thank you for opting in to serve your nation as a Big A airman or any other service, no matter what your uniform is, no matter what rank you are. I have very high confidence that our 0.4 billion people will continue to have strong competitive advantages against our 1.4 billion person adversary in the PRC. And it's because of you that we have that significant competitive advantage. So continue to do what you do great, including find the next you, inspire the little kid to grow up to be you, and remind everyone how awesome it is that we have a founding document with founding principles that have allowed us to do this for 250 years plus and counting. And if we hold to that, will give us at least that many more hundreds of years into the future as well. So thank you for your small part in that great American journey and that great American experience from here at the Center of the Aerospace Testing Universe. Have a great